Hey, I'm Shanna.
And I'm Megan.
And welcome to the Besties Book Buzz. This is our new channel.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about books, bookish things.
And some lifestyle bits as well.
Just a little bit. So today we are bringing you our May wrap-up video.
Yes.
We read a total of together 20 books. So it's been a good reading month. Let's start with a little bit.
Stars.
She's a 5-star. We've got The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. I wasn't sure going in. Like, I know she kind of starts a relationship with a ghost. That's like what I had read on the back, and I'm like, how is this going to be a long-term, relationship? Yes. I just think the way that it was done was really great. I really liked how it wrapped up at the end. I liked all the little moments, like, getting to see a little bit of her life with her dad, who owns a funeral home, and like her whole family, but she hasn't really seen them for quite a while. At least she hasn't visited home. Her dad dies, and that's the reason she ends up going back to her small town. When she was younger, she actually solved a murder case because she was talking to a ghost.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like death has been a component of her life for a really long time.
Yeah. And then this ghosty guy just comes in and is like, hey, what's happening? There's kind of also an enemies to lovers or disliked to like moment. It's very interesting. I really like how it was all tied up. I like the romance components and the family components, and I would definitely recommend this.
So my first book is a graphic novel called Crumbs, which I actually became aware of because one of my local bookstores had it on display for spooky reads. So Crumbs is kind of a love story between Ray and then Lori. And she is a seer. She actually sees with high accuracy what's happening right now, which is really fascinating to me. And then Lori, his aunt owns a super cute bakery, and they meet because she's a regular who gets the romance pastry every week.
Ooh.
And it's just really cute. It was originally a webtoon. I knew to go in with somewhat low expectations because the only other webcomic I feel like I've read before this is Heartstopper. So I kind of knew that there would be more of an emphasis on the art than the dialogue, at least for the couple that I've read so far.
I love that. I'm gonna have to read that.
Yes,
I love a graphic novel. Alright, so my next book that I will talk about is actually The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. So I actually read this with my fiance, who read it when they were younger. I gave it 2 stars. Please don't hate me. It was just I never read it when I was younger. I feel like if I had, it would probably be a lot higher of a rating. But for one, I just the main character is a 6th grader, right? He's 12. It was a little hard to relate to his style of humor and just his perspective because, he's half my age. Also, just I don't know if I love the mythology retellings because Song of Achilles was good. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't really care about the characters until later on for that. Same with Percy Jackson. I'm not going to be continuing the series, but my fiance is with their rereading journey, which I think is cute. I do want to try out some other maybe Electra.
Yes,
I know that's one.
And then Circe is on my list as well.
Yeah. I feel like it helps a lot for me to have a more feminine or older perspective, just to help me where I am at in my life right now.
So next I feel like I want to give my perspective on one of the books that I actually read with Cindy's 2023 Asian Readathon, which I've participated in for 3 years, including this year. The first one that I read at the very beginning of May was What My Bones Know, a memoir of healing from complex trauma, which I have my notes here if I glance to the side. Kind of went in with somewhat high expectations, just because I had seen that floating around with some of the people I watch where they're fans of memoirs. Honestly, for me, I ended up giving it a 4-star because it was still a really, really good read. But when I go into memoirs, I'm looking more for the personal details than the learning aspect. And while CPTSD was fascinating to hear about, and dear God, I hope that becomes an official diagnosis in like the DSM soon, if not already. But the book definitely focused more on what we as readers can learn about mental health and therapy, and less about the author Stephanie Fu's journey within itself.
Continuing with the Asian Readathon, this was actually my first year participating in it. I know last year I did read some authors from the Asian diaspora for AAPI month, but I wasn't like necessarily part of the readathon. So.
Even one book counts though, I would say.
True.
Sure.
I read quite a few by Asian authors this month.
Yay.
Yes. So I really enjoyed Arsenic and Adobo. This is by Mia P. Manansala. It is honestly a really cute, like, cozy mystery moment. I really like this book because, for one, they have like a glossary at the beginning, so you know how to like pronounce everything. I did listen to the audiobook for this one, so that helped as well. But I like having the physical copy. I grabbed this from the library because at the end they actually have different recipes for some of the foods that they talked about, like the ube cookies, you know, the thing that might have poisoned someone. Basically what happens is our protagonist, her family owns a restaurant, and her ex-boyfriend comes in one day, and they're kind of like not on great terms, and he's kind of the worst. But he actually ends up, you know, with his face in the food because he was poisoned. There might be some framing involved. At one point, our protagonist is actually a very big suspect in the case. So she's trying to figure out what happened so that she can clear her name, her restaurant's name. I also did like the romance in this. I believe I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars.
Nice.
I think it was close to 5. It might have gotten up to 5 actually, because I did really enjoy reading this.
So for my next pick, I might have to disappoint a lot of people. I'm talking Happy Place by Emily Henry, which I unfortunately gave 3 stars. This is actually her 4th release now. So for me, Beach Read was 4 stars, and then her next 2 novels, People We Meet on Vacation and Book Lovers, were absolute glowing 5 stars for me. But Happy Place, unfortunately, was a major disappointment for me, honestly. There were definitely some really, really great qualities of the book that I loved. The friend group. Every single character in this tight-knit friend group was very fleshed out, and I feel like had depth, and they had, you know, stuff going on in their lives, and they weren't just there to kind of progress the plot and the romance between the 2 main characters. The story centers on these 2 now exes because they were engaged, and they have to go to the beach house that they've gone to for years and years with their group of friends, most of which they knew from college, and now I believe they're in like their early 30s. But it's the last vacation that they can ever take at that beach house because it's going to get sold by one of the friends' fathers. And that in itself reminds me of Fire Island on Hulu, which is a movie that both of us love. Yeah. And like, definitely this book is the same in terms of spectacular, just like vacation and like beach vibes, and I just wanted to be there. I feel like in a lot of romances, especially the more like current ones that are coming out now, the 2 love interests are at like a similar social standing, at least compared to like what you're meant to do in society. Whereas in this book, the main girl is a surgical resident, like actual, you know, Grey's Anatomy type of stuff. And then for Wynn, who is the male love interest, He is mostly working on helping to keep the family business afloat. The main reason that I gave it such a low rating is because, especially being someone who doesn't really vibe with a lot of physical chemistry and romance, like personally, I would love for there to be really no sex scenes or sex scenes like much later in the book after a lot of slow burn and development between the two love interests. But this one, even from the start, there's a lot of touching and like other elements where it's like that's what their friends are used to when Harriet and Wynne were together, and so they have to kind of keep up that part of their charade to keep things realistic in the friends' eyes.
So, my next book, I think I'm gonna talk about Tokyo Ever After.
Yes.
Yes, so I actually just finished this yesterday afternoon, I think. I really enjoyed this. So it's kind of like a modern fairy tale moment where our main character is a senior in high school and she finds out that her father, her biological father, is the imperial prince in Japan. She ends up being in Japan for quite a lot of the book and she's figuring out her identity. She looks like the people in Japan, which she feels more comfortable with. However, she's struggling with like all of her American tendencies and she's like, I really don't fit in here either. So she's going through a lot of identity and like figuring out you don't really need to fit in, you need to find spaces that fit your life and find people who fit your, you know, your goals, your values, your life. Her friend group was amazing. I love, they call themselves the AGG, the Asian Girl Gang. They're all amazing. I am definitely going to be reading, what's the second book called?
Tokyo Dreaming.
Tokyo Dreaming, the second book in the series, because I'm obsessed.
For my next book, I kind of have, I think it's somewhat of a new release, maybe like 1 or 2 months old, and it's The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell. It was marketed as a thriller, but honestly people have said definitely go in thinking cozy mystery vibes, so I'm glad that you also had a cozy mystery in the wrap-up. The premise is that basically there's this cooking show that is the American version of the Great British Bake Off, because you're on this gorgeous estate, you have the tent where like the bakers bake everything, and there is a death at the beginning, and we get multiple perspectives in this book. It's, I believe her name is Betty, the organizer of the whole show, or the host I want to say, and then all like 5 or 6 of the contestants also get perspectives. What I really liked about The Golden Spoon is, for one, the family vibe between all of the contestants. Like, you just get to care about each and every one of them fondly. Overall, I feel like The Golden Spoon incorporated a lot more of the competition elements. Like, you actually heard descriptions about what these contestants are baking and you get kind of an insight into the judging, but the depth to the mystery that you find out in the end, I wasn't expecting like how fleshed out the story was in relation to some past events that happened decades ago.
Wow. That sounds really good. I knew a little bit about it, and it's actually on my TBR for July when we participate in the Summerween Challenge, because the cover is gorgeous and it matches one of the prompts. Alright, y'all. So, we did a buddy read of Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki.
And it was our first 5-star buddy read.
Yeah, it was. Because normally it's like, I love it, Megan's like, or Megan loves it, and I'm like,
And then some, like, funny you should ask, we were both
yeah, we were both a little bit like, So, this book, it follows quite a few different perspectives. We follow a few characters, so we've got Shizuka Satomi, who is a very, very talented violinist. She can't play anymore for some reason, so she has to, she decides to sell her soul to this like devil type of character. In order to fully, pay the price, she has to gather 7 other souls of violinists. So she's, at this point when we meet her, she's already gotten 6 souls, so she's searching for her 7th. So Katrina is a trans girl.
She might be just on that verge of like 17, 18,
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Because she had literally like run away from home.
So she gets out of this toxic place and she's kind of trying to find where she belongs. She plays the violin and she has never been, classically trained or anything. She's just been, listening to the music and trying to recreate it or like take certain aspects from it and, make it her own. She has the ability to play all types of music, but she really leans into her passion for gaming music. Like that's kind of how she started. I literally love all the characters we're supposed to love and hate all the characters we're supposed to hate. So a family of aliens has escaped this like giant issue in the galaxy, and they are on Earth trying to find a safe place to be while also not getting caught for being aliens. And just trying to live their family's lives. So they actually take over this donut shop called the Stargate Donut. We meet Lon, who is the space commander, and she actually may have a little crush on Shizuka Satomi. So it's really cute to see like the sapphic moments there. And
I feel like when they first meet and are developing like the feelings and the connection, it really gripped me and I was excited for like where that was going. But then the plot kind of turned away from that in the last third.
Yeah.
And like the romance wasn't really present.
I think it was just like there was a lot going on, but it does revisit it at certain parts. I agree. I feel like it would be nice to have more to their relationship, but it definitely doesn't like detract that the amount that was given. So I think this is marketed as a sci-fi, but I feel like the sci-fi elements are really like contained within that subplot. Sure. I feel like all the characters grow a lot, but Katrina, I'm like, yes, get it, girl.
Yes.
So highly recommend. 5 out of 5 stars. I will be taking this to my grave. We'll go ahead and talk about The Last White Man by Mohsen Hamid. I had high hopes for this book because I read Exit West and I found it really intriguing. I loved the ambiguity and the plot and just all the themes, but this one kind of fell flat for me. It was a really short book, so like when I was halfway through I considered DNFing it, but then I was like, let's just persevere. Let's be a little bit, tenacious with this one. And it didn't get better, and I was so sad. Like, people start, if they are white, they start becoming, like their skin has a lot more melanin, and they start turning, brown, darker shades, and so there's a lot of conversation around race, but I feel like there could have been more. Not a lot happened in the book. It was kind of just like almost stream of consciousness, like this happened, but it wasn't like a larger story. It was not memorable. Like I'm really having trouble remembering what happened, and like albeit I did read it at the beginning of the month. But I do definitely recommend Exit West, and I hope to read some of his other books.
So on my end of things, I must say we're going to kind of enter a slump where I have a lot of 3 stars in a row because we're going to save the best book, or one of the best books of the month for last that we buddy read. So I'm going to move on to one of the other books that I have a physical copy for, because Shanna definitely had way more physical copies than me, and this is Things We Lost to the Water by Eric Wynn, I want to say. I wasn't sure because that last name can be pronounced several different ways that I've heard for like other authors. We have perspectives from both the mother and then her 2 sons, because after they escaped Vietnam, the father was kind of left there and he never followed them, and so she's staking out on her own now as a single mother. I really wish that the book kind of went more into the themes that it kind of marketed itself as discussing, especially in the synopsis. Like, one of the sons is exploring his sexuality, but really we don't get to see many experiences that he's having with, like, any romantic or sexual interests. And the maybe last 20% was actually where some action happened, because that's when, like, a hurricane rolls in. But I was completely checked out by that point, unfortunately.
So I will talk about Frankly in Love next by David Yoon.
And look at this book, though.
Look
and
at
like
her.
the edges.
What do you mean? Gorgeous. I actually think I got this from you.
Yes.
Sometimes I just steal Megan's books. But this is about Frank Lee, who kind of similarly to Tokyo Ever After is trying to figure out his identity, while also like having a lot of the pressures of his parents wanting him to date a nice Korean girl, whereas he has a crush on this white girl in his grade, and they start dating. And because he can't tell his parents, he starts a fake dating situation with one of his friends. She is actually also dating someone her parents wouldn't approve of. So they start fake dating and chaos ensues. All the things happen. I was like, what is this going to do next? Like, I was really shook. I gave it 4 stars because while I did like it, I didn't love it. The main character, he's not great in the way that he handles things. Honesty can be really good in some cases, but there's also a lot of, like I said, backlash. So, but I feel like if he had been honest with certain people, it would have been a much better situation for everyone. I did really like the writing, and even though it's like a YA book, same with Tokyo Ever After, actually, like I felt like it was really enjoyable for me as someone who's not a teen anymore.
So even though I gave my next read a 4-star, like it's one where I went in with low-ish expectations because it's the first book that Julia Armfield read, and I think you might know her first full-length novel, which is Our Wives Under the Sea, if that's on your TBR.
It is on my TBR.
Because
so good.
I read that last year, and some of the elements in that got a little bit strange with not bodily horror, but just bodily things that Julia puts in her book. It's either like, ew, or like, and like none of it's in a bad way, which is like really interesting, because like I'm usually really weird with like kind of somewhat disturbing images.
Yeah, you should see Megan watch a horror movie. It's like,
yes,
the whole
70% of the time. Or I'm like, oh, looking at Shanna, like, tell me what's happening.
Tell me when it's over.
Before she published Our Wives Under the Sea, she published Salt Slow, and that is actually a short story collection. And with every single one of the short stories, I just fell in love. I was really intrigued. Upon a reread, I would definitely consider Salt Slow a 5-star read, I think.
Alright, this is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. And no, I am not a teenager, but yes, I do work with teenagers. And I found it, it's by Sean Covey, which is the son of Seth Covey, I want to say, who wrote the original 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I read this because it's a little bit more condensed, and I needed to read about the habits for this professional development thing that I had going on. I really like the habits. I think that they are very helpful. I rated it 3 stars because, I mean, it is directed towards teens. I also found that, like, Sean Covey was a little bit just, like, I think that he did come from a place of privilege, so, like, some of the things could have a little bit more nuance coming from a different author. But I definitely think the 7 habits are very useful, and I'm definitely going to be employing those more in the future. But, yeah, read it for work. 3 stars.
So, same as Happy Place, for me, this next book, I also had high expectations for, which I feel like they shouldn't have been as high, given the critiques I heard from her first book. And the book I'm referring to is Siren Queen by Nevo. I, at one point at least, and I'm trying to get back into it, was a major film buff, and this actually takes place in the golden age of filmmaking. And that really intrigued me, as well as the Asian representation. Both of us have read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of when you started talking about this book, because I was like, okay, the themes.
And I was hoping for similar vibes, and in some cases, it kind of had like part/characters where it was distracting how much it was like Seven Husbands, because one of the main characters in that book that I really adored is her, I guess you would say, friend and also somewhat mentor, Harry, who is a prominent gay character within the story, along with Evelyn Hugo herself. And in this book, there's actually also a character named Harry who is gay and is one of her only advocates within the filmmaking industry. This is the second book written by Nevo, the first one being The Chosen and the Beautiful, which is a great Gatsby retelling. And I had kind of started it, but the kind of whimsical, fantastical elements for that book started right away. And for me, I'm a contemporary fiction person primarily, and so sci-fi and fantasy are kind of less my jam, but I am getting into it more and more as time goes on. And so I went into Siren Queen honestly expecting there to be more of those components within it. But honestly, there wasn't very much of kind of fantasy included in it, to where when it was mentioned, it took me out of the story, because I feel like it would have been just as good, if not better, if it was just contemporary fiction with the sapphic elements, which I did love that this also had sapphic elements. And it's kind of like an open secret within Hollywood that gay people exist. No one gets hate for it, which I absolutely love. And before going into the book, I didn't exactly know why it was titled Siren Queen, because I feel like this wasn't part of the marketing, but actually about like halfway through, and that's another thing, is I feel like even though the whole book was well written and I don't want to say poorly paced, but like to get to Hollywood and to get to where she is having these more significant roles, it did take to about like halfway through. But at that point, she gets kind of involved in this franchise they're creating, where she is the villain of the stories, being a literal like evil mermaid. Like a siren, and that's one of the only roles that she could get within Hollywood because of the definitely justified exceptions she listed when kind of striking a deal with the higher ups, which was no maids, no funny talking, no fainting flowers. And I loved that she was really, from the beginning, before she even kind of landed in the industry, was advocating that for herself. Unfortunately, in the end, it did end up becoming a 3-star though, when it was, I feel like, a 3.5 to 4 throughout most of it.
Okay. Now, here's another buddy read, but Megan finished it before me, which was last month, so yes. I will be talking about this mainly, but we'll both talk about it, kind of. Yeah. So, the premise of this book, this is House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. Our protagonist is like a young adult woman. She is working as a like house cleaner. She lost her parents, and then her brother, they have a very strained relationship, I guess you could put it gently, and she finds this opportunity to be a blood maid in the newspaper. So she actually does end up becoming a blood maid, but there's some serious stuff that goes down. So she leaves the life that she knew. She gets on this train with this guy.
He's kind of like a scout crossing countries to find the people with the tastiest blood.
Yeah. Tiago's his name, and he's like, ooh, I think I know someone who's gonna really like your blood. So he ends up taking her to meet Elizabeth, who is like this countess, and she has quite a few blood maids actually already.
And one thing that I love is she deals with some discrimination, especially when she first arrives, because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we know that she came from like a very low class in society, and then the other blood maids are kind of from a more privileged position where that's more so the type of person who becomes a blood maid, and she was actually an exception.
I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars, and I did finish it this month. What did you give it?
I'm going to say 4 stars as well.
Get it.
So my next one is also a somewhat new release. I think it was actually within the past month, so I was really shocked that I could actually get a physical copy from the library, which we are also avid users of the library for physical books, and Libby especially.
Yeah.
But this book is Adelaide by Genevieve Wheeler, I want to say. Adelaide, instead of kind of like this long-term relationship, deals with a somewhat long-term situationship. And I think that the background that they gave on both Adelaide and Rory were really interesting, because with Rory, he was in a long-term relationship with this minor character who ends up becoming really integral to the story. Almost too much of her is mentioned in the story. And so now he's like terrified of entering another committed relationship. And Adelaide, when she was young, like in high school, she was in like a massively abusive relationship. And so now this being, I want to say maybe 5 to 7 years later, after going through college and a couple years after that, she's really rediscovering her sexuality and going out and having one-night stands and flings. But something about Rory, which I can't personally see what, but it makes her kind of instantly be intrigued and attracted to him, even as he becomes more and more flaky and awful in a lot of different ways and circumstances. And honestly, I feel like up to maybe halfway, I want to say, I was still thinking 5 stars. But it just got to the point where there is an event that happens that just completely seems to take over all of the main character's thoughts, and she kind of, in a way, makes this event all about herself. And she is supporting Rory through this hard time because it affects him significantly more, and of course that is super great of her to do as a person, but keeps her attached to this toxic man for way longer than she should have.
That can be so frustrating though, when like the main character gets with someone you know is not good for them.
Yeah.
I'm just like, please, let me talk to you.
But I definitely want to read more books with those kind of themes, but hoping for more of a win the next one.
Yeah. So the next book I'm going to talk about, the penultimate, ooh, I feel so fancy using that word, is Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This was a recommendation from Megan.
Yes, 5 stars from me.
Yeah, it was a 4-star for me. I really enjoyed it. I don't know. Sometimes I just like have trouble between 4 and 5 star. Like it's just, I love too many books. Basically, our main character, whose name is Medlin, she has this big Chinese Indonesian family, so she has like a lot of aunties, and her mom. Her mom tends to be very like meddling in Medlin's life.
Yes.
For example, the thing that really kicks off this whole thing is her mom decides to pretend to be her and go on a dating app and, you know, is talking to these guys, and she finds one. She actually sets up a blind date for Madeline. So, like, the mom is being very innocent with things, but, you know, eggplants.
Yeah, she kind of doesn't understand when he's, like, trying to hit that.
Yeah. So he comes into this blind date thinking, okay, she already knows who I am, and she's been talking to me these certain ways.
Yeah.
So when he tries to act on it, she's like, and he accidentally is killed. Then, kind of unrelated almost, but there's a wedding that's happening. It's like a very big wedding. It happens on a boat.
Yeah, because her and her mom and the Aunties run a, like, wedding industry kind of business.
Yeah, and Madeline, our protagonist, is the photographer. So they are, like, all in this, and they go to the wedding, but they have to get rid of the body somehow.
Yes, because it was accidentally brought to the grounds of the wedding in a freezer.
Yeah, so they, like, can't get rid of this guy, right? And so a lot of things happen. There's also kind of, would you say, a second chance romance?
Yeah, the hotel manager is actually her high school sweetheart, and they haven't seen each other in years.
I honestly just really love this book for, like, the supportive family moments. Like, even when, you know, the mom was being a mess with catfishing, like, it all came from a place of love. I feel like the way that they respond to all the things that are happening are very supportive. Maybe not the best ways to handle things, but they're just supporting and being a sweet little family. So I really like this, and I feel like Madeline also finds a way to kind of get out of the identity of her family and also become, like, more of herself, which I love character growth. So 4 stars, definitely recommend. Definitely going to be picking up the second book.
Awesome. And then our last book to discuss was, like, a very new release.
Oh my god! Yellow Face.
It's by R.F. Kwan.
Yo, I just finished this book yesterday, last night. I am still, I just can't even. I can't even.
So, for one, I really love that this author went contemporary fiction because R.F. Kwan is most known for the Poppy War series, which I believe has 3 books, and that's fantasy. But with this book, it actually doesn't center on a Asian character for the main character. It's a white character named June Hayward, and she has been kind of, in her eyes, frenemies with one of her classmates where they knew each other in college and have kept in touch because they live in the same city after college. And Athena actually ends up dying, and June was there when it happened, even though she in no way had a part in, like, why Athena died, which is good because there is kind of some mystery to this book, but definitely leans more contemporary. The night of Athena's death, June skedaddles out of her place with a finished manuscript. And Athena has always been a really private person, and she is kind of renowned as an Asian author in the book community. She's published 2 or 3 books, and June starts out being like, I have to finish and polish up this book in Athena's legacy so the work didn't go to waste, really. But then it turns into her just blatantly taking it for her own.
Dude, I felt the entire time like our protagonist, who I would say antagonist, I feel like she was gaslighting me. I thought she was trying to, like, make me feel like this is okay. And, like, because we're in her thought process, and she's like, oh, you know, it's just like, I'm doing this for Athena. And then later on, it's like, oh my god, it's the reverse racism. I'm like, oh, stop right there. She is an entire mess.
Yes.
And And she changes her name to like
A Juniper Song.
to Juniper Song so that it sounds like a Chinese last name. I'm like, are you kidding me? She's a mess. She is a mess.
And it's so much so to the point that it's not even like her marketing and branding surrounding the book, but her interactions with people. Like, she gets invited to like Asian American groups to speak as an author or participate in things, and they clearly think and probably invited her thinking that she is Asian American, and then it's really awkward and cringe when they find out that is not indeed the case.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, I was reeling the entire time, honestly. Like, I feel like this might be one of the only books I've read where we're supposed to hate the main character. And I love it because I do. I love to hate. Like, come on, girl. I could not get over her. And, like, it was definitely interesting to see, like, the commentary in the publishing world and, like,
Oh yes,
how
there was
things
so
were
much
handled.
of that.
Yeah. And there's actually in the publishing team, there's a Korean American who ends up being, like, she writes a 1-star review on Goodreads and, like, gets off the team for that. But she's just, like, totally not on the side of June, and she... Like, June just gets so butthurt about it. She's like, I can't believe you would write a one... Like, she screenshots the 1-star review and sends it to her team. And she's like, this isn't very professional. OMG. Like, girl, get over yourself. Get over yourself. I'm so irritated still. Like, I have been thinking about this book, like, when I'm reading it and when I'm not reading it. Like, in between, I'm just like, what's going to happen next? Like... she's delusional. It makes me want to read R.F. Kuang's other books, especially because I am kind of trying to get into fantasy more. I'm definitely more, like, I used to be a sci-fi girly, and I've been a lot of, like, romance contemporary. I had a historical fiction phase, so I don't know, like, I feel like fantasy is now for me. Alright, those are the books that we read this month in May.
Thanks for watching our first video. Like and subscribe for more content from us. We're thinking to publish 2 videos a month. I want to say maybe more, just depending on anything you guys would like to see.
Yeah, definitely. And leave us a comment with your favorite book of the month of May, and also maybe, like, if you have any, you know, comments on any of the books we've read.
Yes, for sure.
Alright, bye!